Tenzer, political specialist and professor at Sciences Po. Nicolas, thank you very much for being with us today here on France 24. Now, the US believes that sanctions and upping the economic pressure on Iran will force the country to agree to a new nuclear deal. But with such explosive rhetoric that we heard yesterday, is there any way that Iran could come to the table now?
Well, I think that Iran won't, for sure. But still there is a hope, because all the other countries, all the other members of the P5, I mean the permanent member of the UN Security Council, really are just willing to keep the deal intact. And that's, I think, something which is very important. But you know, with the extraterritorial sanctions imposed by the US, it could be very, very difficult for the European companies or Canadian, etc., just to make some deal with Iran. And I think that the real problem is not this one. Of course, I think we have to say that Iran is a criminal power. Just consider, you know, all the war crimes Iran and Russia are perpetrating in Syria. But when it comes to the Iran deal, I think we have really to separate the issues. Yes, Iran is a threat, and President Macron recognizes that it is a threat, certainly, but we have to talk with Iran. And I think, just consider the things as they are. North Korea has the nuclear weapon. Iran actually hasn't. And I think that made a real difference, and we cannot understand why Trump is saying that Kim Jong-un is a very nice guy, etc., and that Iran, Rouhani, is not on this issue.
So you mentioned briefly those other key nations that are involved, that signed the nuclear deal with Iran. Those countries said that they'll set up a new payment system to get around the US sanctions. How is this being viewed in Washington, do you think? This must be surely some sort of a betrayal for...
No, yes, probably it's considered by some hawkish people, you know, in the US as a betrayal. But basically, it is not, because I think that US alone cannot impose its own round of sanctions. That's just impossible. And if the other countries do not agree, if they are not sitting at the same table, because that's just a unilateral decision by Trump, then they have to make the things you know, right, and to continue to do what they expect. The US is not the master of the world. We have just to take into account this reality.
Now, we're seeing a toughening of rhetoric by Washington. Could this be linked to the crucial midterm elections that are just around the corner in November?
No, I think that just Trump's all the time said before, and that's just trying to make exactly the opposite of what Obama did. And I think, of course, that's also domestic politics, obviously. But basically, I think he is pushed on this rhetoric by his national security advisor, John Bolton. And I think that's also a sort of very, very usual point from some of the Republican Party members. The real issue, again, is up to what point is real Donald Trump consistent with this issue? If he is really consistent, he has also to engage again in Syria and just to roll back Iran from Syria. But actually, we don't have this kind of strategy, and it's very unclear to know what on the other Iranian issues we'll do in the next coming weeks and months.
So who is set to make the next move now, then? Is the ball in the US's court or in Iran's court?
Well, I think it's Iran's court, certainly, and of course the EU's court too. And I think that's, the most important player, because of the EU is really committed to restore some kinds of dialogue with Iran. And again, not neglecting and turning a blind eye to, you know, all the attempts of destabilization of all the Middle East by Iran, which is certainly more dangerous in the short and medium run than the nuclear weapons.
Okay, thank you very much once again.